Good morning and welcome to Brussels to our info day on the WIDERA Work Programme, widening participation and strengthening the European Research Area. My name is Jörg Niehoff. I'm Deputy Head of Unit for European Research Area, Spreading Excellence and Research Careers. I'm here today with a large number of colleagues that will guide us through the program and present the different topics. This is all about the European Research Area part today. So if you're interested in widening, please keep in mind we have a dedicated info day on widening in January on the 22nd. So today, all about ERA. The work program has been adopted. It will be published formally only tomorrow. But as you know, we have pre-published the document a couple of times before, so I hope you had access. And in any case, we will share the link again in the slide or later on. I would now quickly show you the agenda so that you know what we have to do through the day. So we have the introduction this morning. We will start at 9:50 sharp with the first pillar on institutional changes for ERA. The timing we keep also so that those that are interested only in single topics can come at a precise point in time. So second pillar on ecosystems for ERA starts at 11:15. And after that, we break for lunch and we see each other again at 2 o'clock for citizens and science in ERA. And we close at the afternoon at around 3:20 on new knowledge for ERA. Very important, there is the Slido code here. You will need that for two purposes. First of all, to submit your questions that we will then answer with the colleagues here in the studio. And secondly, we will share with you some links that are in the presentation so that you can already access the documents or links that we want you to take into consideration. The slides will be also shared on our platform after the event. So whatever we show today, including the links and the additional information, is fully accessible for you afterwards. Before we now go into the details, I would like to invite our colleagues Mina and Magda to do the formal opening. Magda is my head of unit and deputy director for research and innovation in Directorate A, and Mina is our head of department, Mina Wilki, in the Research Executive Agency. So she and her team look after the calls, the projects, so they are the ones that ultimately will help you in doing the grant preparation and help you in implementation your projects. Over to you, Magda and Mina, please.
Thank you, Jörg, and good morning to all. I'm happy to welcome you to our Horizon Europe Info Day, dedicated to the 2026-2027 Work Programme for strengthening the European Research Area. This work programme is one of the components of the larger WIDERA Horizon Europe Work Programme, of which the second component focuses on widening actions. For those of you interested in widening calls, please mark your calendars for dedicated Info Day taking place on January 22nd. Today, we will focus on the European Research Area programme. The European Research Area represents a long-standing ambition to create a single, borderless market for research, innovation and technology across the EU, and where countries act more effectively together by aligning their research policies and programs. This year, when the European Research Area celebrates its 25th anniversary, new and exciting developments are giving the ambition fresh momentum. Notably, the Commission is preparing the European Research Area Act, a legislative proposal aiming at achieving the goals of the European Research Area. The Act will be an important milestone, addressing persistent challenges in research and innovation ecosystem in Europe, such as fragmented regulatory frameworks, uneven investments, and barriers to knowledge sharing. So we invite you all to share your feedback on the key challenges in the European research and innovation ecosystem by participating in the public consultation, which remains open until 23rd of January. Another key development this year was the adoption of the second European Research Area Policy Agenda for the years 25 to 27. The policy agenda sets out voluntary activities to achieve the objective of the European Research Area and is a result of a truly collaborative process that includes all EU member states, Horizon Europe associate countries, research and innovation stakeholders, and the Commission. It comprises practical collaborative activities, 11 structural policies, and 8 ERA actions to advance long-term policy priorities like open science and research careers, while also addressing emerging issues such as artificial intelligence in science. The ERA Work Programme that we present today is designed to serve as a vehicle for implementing the ERA policy agenda by supporting the creation of valuable research, knowledge, and networks. Thanks to this close alignment, we can be confident that the action in the work programme are well aligned with the policy priorities and the needs of our stakeholders. Today, our speakers will guide you through the ERA calls planned for 2026 and 2027 and will answer questions you might have. I hope you enjoy discovering the program and I wish you the best of luck with your applications. I will now hand over to Minna, my colleague from the Research Executive Agency. Please.
Thank you, Magda, and welcome everyone to this InfoDay. For those of you who may be new to us, the European Research Executive Agency, known as REA, has a very straightforward mission: to make sure EU research and innovation programs are implemented smoothly, fairly, and to the highest standards. And we certainly don't do this alone. We work hand in hand with our colleagues in DG Research and Innovation, and I would like to thank them for this opportunity to speak with you today. Their strategic guidance, combined with REA's operational expertise, forms the backbone of successful program delivery. As we start the implementation of the final work program of Horizon Europe, there's a genuine sense of excitement within REA. In particular, today, I would like to attract your attention on the ERA call under the destination Reforming and Enhancing the European Research and Innovation System. This destination is the backbone of our effort to turn ERA principles into everyday practice. It is about future society of European research and innovation. We are designing our call topics in a more open way, opening to new users. This approach has created a very strong interest across topics and higher submissions, with an average good to very good quality. In the past 2 years alone, ERA calls have attracted proposals from over 1,900 different participants across 73 countries. This is a clear sign of their success. Widening countries are well represented with participation peaks in Portugal, Poland, Romania, Croatia, and Bulgaria. All different societal components contributing to the ERA agenda are well represented, even if we would like to see an increase in the participation of public bodies. The calls are structured around 4 pillars, covering a wide range of topics, from accelerating open access and research assessment reforms to building institutional capacities for an ethical, equitable, and inclusive ERA, from strengthening ecosystems for open and sustainable science and innovation, including support to academic startups and spinoffs, to new forms of citizen engagement and better knowledge for ERA policies. We are not looking for isolated short-term projects. We are looking for projects that lead to lasting changes, improving how institutions and research ecosystems work as a whole. And in this respect, REA will continue to help establishing collaboration among projects that are part of the same portfolio, for example, facilitating cluster events. At the end of the day, REA's and European Commission's shared goal is simple: to fund the best projects and to provide solid support to those of you who receive ERA funding, right throughout the duration of your projects. Thank you for joining us today. I wish you all a productive and enjoyable day, and now I hand back the floor to Jörg.
Thanks a lot, Magda and Minna. That was very interesting, and I think was setting the tone for what we have to explain today throughout the day. So you see now with me a slide that somehow brings us back to some of the things that Magda and Minna raised. So very important, the topics that we have in the work program, they're all there to support the implementation of the ERA policy agenda 2025 to 2027. So they are directly policy relevant. And that you will see also reflected in many of the call texts, because it's about driving institutional change, building networks that help us to bring these ERA principles and objectives to a large number of stakeholders. What you see here on the slide is the overview on what we call ERA structural policies and ERA actions. The difference in a simple word is the structural policies are there for a longer duration, whereas the ERA actions have a more limited time frame with distinctive deliverables for the next 3 years. The ones that are highlighted in orange are the ones that are covered by today's Infoday and the WIDERA Work Programme, the ERA part. But of course, the others are addressed either in other parts of the Horizon Europe Work Programme, obviously the research infrastructures, or they are dealt with in other types of actions than the open calls. On the next slide, we see some of the principles that guided us through the work program 2026-27. There was a strong guidance also from our new commissioner to make them simpler, shorter, and more strategic. And the strategic element for us is a simple one because we link it to the agreed priorities between the member states, the stakeholders, and the Commission on supporting the European research area. You will see that the texts are shorter with fewer topics, and being shorter means also they're less prescriptive. They give you more possibilities in your consortium to define activities in your proposal and make sure they're in line with the objectives, but they also fit to what you want to achieve in your institution. We have started publishing the draft work programs very early. I think we started in May, so I hope all of you had access to these early documents. I think if I would compare the first draft to the current draft, we have probably 95% identical texts already. It was small changes, few topics were being added, but we had a good stable text already in May, which means it gives you simply a lot more time to identify your consortium and prepare the proposal. You will also notice, and colleagues will flag that by each topic, we have increased the use of the lump sum funding. There's a dedicated link which I invite you to follow, because if you haven't done lump sum projects before, it's important to understand the mechanics. It requires you to define certain elements in your proposal differently, but then during grant preparation, we will define together with you, so to say, a price tag for certain activities. You don't have to do actual cost reporting any longer. Once activities are finished, payments are executed. So we hope that this simplification and a more strategic approach also leads to better projects. We have in part already implemented this in the work program 2025, and we have seen it was well received by the applicants. We have received very, very good submissions, much more than we have seen in previous calls. So I think we are here on the right way in order to open up the program also to new applicants. On the next slide, I go back a little bit to the structure. So we have in the work program defined 4 pillars that we address in today's Info Day. The first one is on institutional change. So here we address directly institutions where we want to address topics from research assessment to open science, etc. So here we work either in consortia of institutions or with consortia that address in the next layer the institutions where we want to drive the change. We have a second pillar on ecosystems for the European research area, and the third one on citizens and science for the European research area. Here we have a lot of activities from citizen science to competitions to science comes to town. What is a common element for these first 3 pillars is they all work with what we call coordination and support actions. So no research activities in those. It's simply about building networks, designing tools, and bringing the policies and priorities to large stakeholder communities. Different for the pillar 4, here we work with research and innovation actions. It's about creating new knowledge for the European research area. And we have a number of interesting topics that we will explain in the afternoon. Next slide, please. So on the structure in terms of what we do in each pillar and each year, we have, of course, one call in 26, one call in 27. They all open in December, so the formal opening will be tomorrow. That's when you can access the funders and tenders portal and our calls. And they close in March, which means these projects, the successful applications, will start in around November of the following year. So November 26 and November 27 are indicative starting dates for these projects. We have each pillar covered in each of the years, but if you look later onto the details, you will see that the majority of individual topics and areas are in 2026, whereas in 2027 we have fewer topics, but some of them with very large communities. I point already here to the talent ecosystems where we have a large budget and we expect to fund 10 to 15 projects under a single topic. On the next slide, there's an important element here, and you will see that in the different call topics that we present. Many of these call topics address different policy areas. And of course, we want to make sure that we cover all policy areas as good as possible. So therefore, we have text in the work program that refers to the so-called portfolio approach. It means that we, of course, rank the proposals according to their scoring, but we also have the possibility to somehow pick proposals that are necessary in order to have the full coverage of the policy areas, and that allows us to have a balanced portfolio to make sure that we have complementary projects and yet pick projects according to their best ranking in the area. As Minna mentioned, we also try to bring these related projects later on together so that they can also benefit from their experiences and have mutual learning across projects with status seminars and other activities. Now, many of the topics you have seen are of course not new. We have been funding them in one way or the other over the past years. And so there's a lot of knowledge that has been created. And in the past, we often referred in the work program to previous projects in order to point you towards results that are there. We don't do that any longer because we don't want to give the impression that there's a natural succession of projects. We have designed a dedicated part on our ERA research area platform where we are highlighting the outcomes, deliverables, and most useful tools that are coming out of the cohorts of previous projects. So if you want to prepare something on research careers, for example, please go onto that platform and look what is there for research careers, because these are things that you can already use in your consortium. You don't have to duplicate efforts. You get a good overview on what is there that you can use. On the next slide, I have a couple of important elements that you need to look at. So first of all, and I think we are now sharing them one by one also in Slido, there is the work program formally published tomorrow. There you have the first part on widening, which, as I mentioned, we explain on the 22nd of January. And you have the part on the European research area that we present today. So the Bible, so to say, for you is the precise wording that you have here in the work program. There you have to look into the scope, into the expected outcomes, because that is where you have to reply with your application on how do you address these. The evaluators take these literally and assess your proposal against those expected outcomes and the scope. If you have any questions that we either don't answer today or that come up in the course of the proposal preparation, there's a single entry point for that, the so-called research inquiry service. So put these questions there. We normally get back to you quite quickly, but it allows us to make sure that we have a good look at all the questions, make sure the answers are legally correct. And of course, also other applicants can see these replies and benefit also from the extra information. The funding and tenders portal is the central entry point for you to prepare your proposal. You build your consortium there, you submit all the necessary documents. We have one special support that we offer with the ERA brokerage event organized by our National Contact Point Service. That is happening in the next week on the 17th of December. So please use that possibility in case you're looking for partners or you want to find a consortium under preparation and jump on. I think with this we have covered the general points. As a reminder, if you haven't yet logged in, please log into Slido, because we now go to the different blocks and the sessions, and after each of the session we will open up the floor for questions. We are now moving to the first of the blocks, that's the pillar 1, institutional change for ERA. So here, as a reminder, coordination and support actions, the budgets are indicated for each of the topics, and the policy areas we are addressing in this one is equity in open science, inclusive gender equality, research assessment, research ethics and integrity, and last but not least, open access policies. We do this in total in 3 call topics, 2 for 2026 and 1 for 2027. And the first one we are going to address now, and we are almost perfectly on time, is the topic 2026-06-01. I have with me Victoria and Matteo that are going to present these topics. And they are from the unit dealing with open science and research infrastructures, and perfectly placed to explain these topics and answer any question. Please.
Hello, good morning. Good morning, colleagues. Indeed, let's start with the first call on Pillar 1, the accelerating open access and research assessment reforms in the ERA. If we can go to the next slide, I will explain the main elements, which is basically through the use of cascading grants to implement a variety of capacity building activities to support structural changes in research and innovation organizations that concern, as I just mentioned, open access and research assessment. So the key principle is that you need to select one area and develop predefined activities and additional activities and to contribute to the expected outcomes as outlined by the work program. Large communities of stakeholders with broad geographical reach and participation are the targets here, and of course synergies between neighboring policy areas, let's say, and projects that are funded under the call is also an aim. As we just mentioned, the call is just being launched now, and you can submit until the 12th of March. It concerns coordination and support actions, right? The total budget is up to 6 million euros. We expect about 2 to 3 projects to be funded, and the maximum financial support for third parties, that is the cascading grants, is up to 60,000 euros. The approach is what Jörg just described, that of a balanced portfolio. So me and my colleague Matteo will describe topics on open access and research assessment, and these are evaluated together in a portfolio approach, also because of course there are neighboring policies and we want projects in one or submitters, actually proposers in one, to be considering related issues. If we can go to the next slide, we will see the first area. So the first topic is focused on open access publishing, really, and more specifically, it supports the transition of scholarly societies through cascading grants, as I said earlier, to non-profit open access publishing model without author fees. So we have supported this kind of publishing in the Commission for the past few years in order to diversify and enrich the publishing environment and potentiate research institutions and other institutions with such publishing activities to improve their activities that they have or develop new activities. So it squarely fits into our ERA action on applying equity in open science from 2025 to 2027 as part of our ERA policy agenda. And here's what we expect. So we would like publishing activities of scholarly societies in a range of fields, right, transition to non-profit open access publishing without author fees. We expect improved capacities, skills and resources for scholarly societies to make the transition to such models. And overall, we expect greater awareness of and commitment to open science principles and practices among scholarly societies, support to the research reform, and the European Charter for researchers. And we expect about 20 to 30 actions to materialize through these calls, through this particular call. So the target groups obviously are definitely scholarly societies, but also, of course, research performing and funding organizations that may be involved in such activities, libraries, non-profit scholarly publishers, and other research-relevant organizations. If we could go to the next slide. So what are the key elements in scope that are relevant here? So the call is open for and targets actually both national and or European scholarly societies, so they can have either dimension. Hopefully we get some of both. And we are talking about journals, books, or monographs as publishing activities, right? We would like all 6 Frascati fields of science and technology to be addressed in this call. so that we get samples in all of the areas. But we would like at least 1/3 of the grant, minimally, to be distributed in fields that have to do with that are relevant to social sciences and the humanities. We know that there is a tradition of publishing in non-profits in such fields, as well as difficulties and challenges in transitioning to open access. So, and actually a lot less money, let's be frank. So we would like to dedicate 1/3 of such grants, cascading grants, to them. And then what are the types of activities that we expect? We expect work towards developing business models to support sustainable non-profit open access publishing for scholarly societies. We expect the development of guidelines, training materials, and lessons learned to support capacity building for transitions of scholarly societies in the future. And of course, we expect open calls, right? We hope to have at least 30 calls so that we can have it somewhere between 20 and 30 usable, actually, examples, pilots, let's say, of such transitions. So all in all, I mean, we hope that as a result of this call, we're going to have a good core of lessons learned and examples and learnings to use for the future to help scholarly societies to transition in non-profit open access publishing models that are, we think, more equitable. So with this, I can hand over, I think, to my colleague Matteo for the next call.
Please, Matteo.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, everyone. So Area 2, on which I'm focusing, is on research assessment, as my colleague Jörg has mentioned before, and specifically as named sustainable institutional reforms to improve research assessment systems. It's key to highlight that this area contributes to the ERA structural policy reforming research assessment, and in light of this, proposals under this area will deliver on systemic reform of research assessment through the recognition of a diversity of outputs, practices, and activities that maximize quality and impact of research in line with the Agreement on Reforming Research Assessment, the ERA. So, projects results will contribute to all the following expected outcomes. First of all, institutional changes in research performing and funding organizations in favor of more responsible research assessment systems, always in line with the ERA. And secondly, the implementation of action plans of ERA signatories. And thirdly, an increased awareness and trust among researchers and research organizations about reforms of research assessment. In terms of target groups, higher education institutions, research performing and funding organizations, research evaluation agencies, accreditation and quality assurance agency, notably those engaged in the COARA approach. In the next slide, I will focus on the scope of this of Area 2. That is to say that Area 2 aims to support institutional changes, raise awareness, and assess the level of progress made in terms of reforming research assessment, again in line with the ERA. In this context, it's key the distribution of cascading grants, as my colleagues have mentioned before as well. And this is really to effect changes in 50 institutions of different types and geographical areas. And in doing so, proposals shall build on past or ongoing relevant initiatives and projects at the European or national level. In terms of activities that proposals are expected to put forward, the following are the key ones. That is to say, launching open calls, providing grants that support institutional changes, develop or reform research assessment and evaluation criteria and processes along with the COARA approach, implementing reforms aiming to establish qualitative peer review at the core of research assessment practices, and while moving away from the misuse of traditional bibliometrics, it's also very important to implement institutional changes that recognize the diversity of activities and roles of researchers, while enhancing the recognition of diverse research practices as a key critical part of assessment systems. Last but not least, the analysis of outcomes of research assessment reforms and the identification of relevant barriers and input indicators, and the quantification of progress of action plans is also a key aspect. To conclude, on top of these activities, proposals are welcome to put forward any complementary, additional complementary activities to these key ones that I've just listed. And with this, I give the floor back to my colleague.
Thanks a lot, Matteo. Victoria, we can continue directly with the next topic?
We can, yes.
Please.
So, yes, so the next topic is about facilitating the development of institutional open access policies this time through the retention of intellectual property rights. If we can have the next slide, I will start by explaining actually what is rights retention. Probably if you're interested in this call, you already know, but it means exactly what it says, retaining all or part of your intellectual property rights in view of providing open access. This is a practice that requires policies, actually, and here we aim to support the development of institutional open access policies that have rights retention as a core component of them. This means that either the institution or its researchers, as required by policy, retain either their full copyright or part of their copyright to provide open access with, of course, with a license, with a CC BY license. This is our policy, and this is what we, of course, recommend for everyone in Europe. The call is, of course, a coordination and support action that just launched and will be open until the 11th of March. Its budget is up to 2 million euros, and we expect one project to be funded. And here, as we said earlier, we will be using the lump sum approach for funding. It is a part of our ERA policy, our structural policy regarding the open access sharing, actually, and research data and digital objects, actually, frankly, including through the European Open Science Cloud. This is a long-term policy, a very important structural policy. What do we expect as outcomes of this call? Just what I said earlier, we expect to see an increase of open access policies that are well developed and include clauses regarding rights retention. Recent research shows that rights retention supports the increase of open access, so we want to support the development of such policies that support institutional independence, let's say, in managing institutions in managing their own research outputs, preferably with open access as we would like. So therefore, we expect to see also a higher share of research publications across the EU and the associated countries that are in open access as a result of increase of such policies, especially in low-performing countries. And we also expect to see increased access to and preservation of scientific information, specifically through institutional infrastructures, public infrastructures such as repositories. Our target groups for this call are research performing organizations, library, policymakers, of course, as well, funders, and others. And in the next slide, we can discuss the key elements that are in scope. Definitely, you need to cover the following activities if you're applying for this project, at least the following activities. You can have other complementary activities, but we would like to actually see the development of networks of research institutions working towards aligned institutional policies to enable open access through rights retention. So it's not like we want one institution here and one there. We have seen actually countries implement such schemes, let's say, where networks are created that are working in the same direction, so the policies are aligned to help researchers and to help more effective policies. So this is one aspect that we're looking to see as a result. And of course, we would like to see comprehensive guidance tools, training materials and lessons learned to support other research performing organizations to expand open access and support open access policies through rights retention. And then we are expecting to see strategies to maximize the approval and adoption of rights retention and open access policies by researchers. One of the things that we know about researchers is that unfortunately, they know very little about intellectual property rights, a lot less about rights retention. So we are hoping to use this call to find ways to overcome barriers regarding understanding on the side of researchers and more approval of such strategies and policies. So this is it.
Super. Thanks a lot, Victoria, Matteo, again for this presentation. So we have now two topics, and very important for the first topic to keep in mind, if you're interested in building a proposal, it has to include financial support to third parties. So you have to design calls where you basically give part of the grant agreement to other institutions in order to work on these priorities. Now, I see already a couple of questions coming in via Slido. Well, I think the first one I already answered myself. For the Area 1 Open Science, the cascading funds will be launched by the projects that will be funded. Correct. So in the application, the project has to describe how many calls they want to launch, how many projects they intend to fund, and what are the conditions for the funding. There is a dedicated description on the so-called financial support to third parties in the general annexes to the work program. So please read them, because there are some specific requirements that you have to address when you draft your proposal. It's not complicated, but it has to be in line with these requirements. So, Area 2, is the ERA action plan implementation being monitored? If so, how? Please, Matteo, how do we do that?
Yeah, thank you very much. So indeed, the implementation of ERA action plans is a key point in the implementation of, in the broad implementation of the ERA policy agenda 25-27. At the moment, more than 250 action plans have been published and are openly and publicly available on Zenodo. And how is it that we are monitoring the implementation of action plans? One example that I can give, that is a relevant one, is that we are launching an expert study on this that will be monitoring the implementation through both quantitative analysis and qualitative analysis to understand where is it that we are now at with regard to the implementation. So this is how we are proceeding. We need to gather evidence to understand what is the stage of implementation, and we have already started to do so. More precisely, the results of this study will be published in spring 2026. So by then, we will have more evidence available on the implementation of our action plans.
Super. Thanks a lot, Matteo. There's a simple question on the funding rates for coordination support actions, be it lump sum or not. So indeed, in everything that we are presenting today, the funding rate is 100%, but those of you that will follow the widening info day on the 22nd of January, we'll notice there we have some core topics that will work with a reduced funding rate. But today, 100% of eligible costs. There's a question on the scholarship topic. Can societies use other languages than English and participate?
Indeed, of course, we are inclusive. I mean, we know that scholarly societies have a long tradition across Europe, and for hundreds of years they publish also, obviously, not in English. We want to support their transition to non-profit open access publishing, so of course. However, we do anticipate that, for example, parts of their metadata or abstracts, etc. While you transition, for example, you develop some policies that facilitate access by speakers of the English language, let's say, in order to broaden the readership. But we support multilingualism, of course, and diversity, bibliodiversity. So indeed, of course, such societies are part of the call.
Great, thanks a lot. There's a question from Merve on what are target groups in our understanding, whether it is limited to those that are directly participating in the consortium, or does it go further? And indeed, we want to reach large target groups, so we expect the consortium to reach out to institutions, to entities, to individuals beyond the consortium itself. So that's an important guiding principle that we see in basically all the topics. And it's amplified in the first topic that we saw here, where we do that with financial support of third parties. This has the advantage that the consortium can also give dedicated resources to these institutions, so provide some form of financial incentives also to participate. There is a question on the open access topic. What are the most common challenges faced by research performing organizations when it comes to implementation of rights retention policies?
Indeed.
Gloria.
The first challenge is that they don't know about them. So we are trying to support actually the increase, as I said earlier, of open access through this. So it's not something that has been debated at all. It's just started the past few years. We know that some countries are doing well, like notably Norway, for example, or the UK, and some activities exist across Europe, but the issue is again that researchers, need to be educated. So institutions need to get to their researchers. So through their institutional policy, of course, the researchers will be obliged, let's say, to learn about this and support rights retention. We know that a very common practice right now is that, of course, publishers ask for the transfer of rights of the authors, the researchers, that is, when they come to publish somewhere, to the publisher. And this is, as we know from studies, this is a bottleneck and an obstacle to open access, because then when the rights are handed over, you have no decision-making power over how to provide access to your work. Therefore, we want the research institutions to be more active in this. And we cannot leave researchers alone. Researchers can do so much when they're, asked to publish and publish and publish. So research institutions need to become aware of this possibility and to implement policy. So we wanted to go up in the policy agenda of the institutions, basically. Right now, it's not very high up.
Okay. Perhaps as a follow-up question, because it's directly related. There's a question on the strategies that we recommend to address these bottlenecks. Is there anything that we can recommend, or any source of information where people can have a look?
Yes. Well, there are lots of sources of information. In terms of open access policies, let's say, we know that most funders, also in low-performing countries, do require open access. Now, at the institutional level, there is a bit of a slowdown now. So I think a lot of information can come actually through resources that we have funded in the past. For example, in terms of publishing, if you want to publish in open access so that, you can comply, let's say, with Horizon Europe, or with a lot of funders, actually, our policy is quite emulated. So it's, you can look at support for open access publishing venues that are do not require you to pay. We should bless our own to start with, Open Research Europe, which we offer for free for researchers who have our funding, but also there are public resources such as the Directory of Open Access Journals, where you can find journals which are open access and you can see which one of them are in your area. And you can see which one of them you do not have to pay fees, for example, if you're not so well endowed in terms of finances for open access. Other than that, I mean, you can look at the directory for open access repositories if you would like to find a repository to publish, or your own institutional repository. In general, your library in your institution is a very good first step. Librarians, I mean, are the people who provide access to information, so they know what their researchers need and the resources that are available. So I would highly recommend to do that. And they could actually potentially direct you to nationally existing resources that I may not be aware of. But I would say go to your library, look at the Directory of Open Access Journals, look at the Directory of Open Access repositories if you want to deposit in open access or if you want to publish in open access. Speak to your librarian to find out what the situation is in your institution and how you can make your work openly accessible. Whether your institution has open access policies that you may not necessarily be aware of, this is also quite common. So that's what I would recommend. So, and of course, at the institutional level, like the funders and the ministries, I mean, we have said what in our recommendation on open access to and preservation of scientific information. That's a Commission recommendation of 2018. We said what we expect member states to do. We will say again in the ERA Act that's coming up. And of course, do look at the horizon policies. If you're a policymaker, I think we'd love for the member states to have aligned policies, and I think we're in a good path.
Thanks a lot. It's good to hear that there's still libraries and librarians.
Yes, indeed.
Good. There are a couple of general questions that I perhaps quickly deal with. So first of all, the question on the ERA calls, is there any requirements in terms of participation of widening countries? And there we have to be clear. Our work program has two parts. The widening part, presented in January, there only coordinators from widening countries can submit proposals, whereas in some of these consortia, of course, also partners from other countries can participate. But coordination is limited to widening countries. On the opposite, for the ERA calls, we don't care about the classification of countries. All eligible entities from all countries can participate in these calls, and there is no requirement in terms of composition, in terms of nationalities. So we see if there's anything else coming in. If not, I think we had a... Yes, last question coming in. Can we see more clearly if a CSA uses lump sum or not? This affects the work program planning. So if you go into the individual call topics, in each and every call topic you have what we call the specific call conditions. And in there you always find the explanation whether we use lump sum or not. And if it's lump sum, then please use the tutorials and training material that we have centrally. We saw the link before in order to make sure that you prepare your proposal on that aspect correctly. And the general question that, of course, I can also pick up. How will you stop the proliferation of AI perfectly written proposals? Does REA have the tools to manage these risks? So, of course, we are aware that there are more and more proposals that are prepared by using also AI for certain elements. We make also clear that this is, of course, a possibility that applicants can use. They have to mention that in their proposal when they submit it. And, of course, our experts have the usual look at the quality of the proposals according to the 3 criteria. We don't have the feeling that AI support for writing proposals has an impact on the final selection, because in the end, the ideas count. So we, as you suggest, we are monitoring this closely. I think we will also, on our side, have to look into the use of AI in proposal preparation and evaluation for the future in the next framework program. But for now, we have the feeling these things are relatively good under control, and REA is monitoring this very closely, as do the other agencies as well. So then I would suggest we break here for a short moment. We are back in 10 minutes at 10:30 for the next topic. Again, many thanks to Matteo, because you will not stay on. Vittoria stays on, so see you back in a few minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bold visions move the world. This year, we celebrate 25 years of the European Research Area, Europe's bold vision to create a single market for research and innovation, a space where knowledge moves freely, where science drives progress. This is the fifth freedom in action. It began with an ambitious target, 3% gross domestic product for public and private investment in research. Since 2010, EU investment in research and development has grown from 1.97% to 2.27% of the GDP. The results of this ongoing investment speak for themselves. The number of researchers grew by over 50%. Open access publications now make up nearly 78%. The percentage of women in top academic positions rose from 19.7% to 27.3%. International PhD student numbers increased from 16% to 23%. 148 regions are engaged in regional innovation valleys, and 5 EU mission implementation platforms have been launched. In 2019, the European Research Area was revamped with new objectives and new governance to better respond to growing challenges, such as the green and digital transitions. This relaunch also introduced ERA's first policy agenda, delivering real impact across nearly all aspects of research and innovation. It focused on 4 priority areas: deepening a truly functioning internal market for knowledge, increasing society's participation in the ERA, amplifying access to research and innovation excellence, and advancing concerted research and innovation investments and reforms, under which we achieved successful results such as championing open science with a renewed European Open Science Cloud, securing and advancing research careers, and taking up the challenges of the green and digital transitions by bringing science closer to citizens. ERA has been a driving force behind Europe's progress in effective policy, creating tangible impact on its greatest asset, people. The researchers who found meaningful, secure, and dynamic careers in science. The academics working in inclusive, fair environments supported by gender equality plans, continuous monitoring, and diversity initiatives. And those who saw their research transform into innovative products and services, also with the help of the new guidelines on knowledge valorization that were adopted in 2023. The citizens who joined researchers, from school children acting as plastic pirates, measuring pollution, to young scientists in the making, competing in hackathons and shaping solutions for tomorrow. The millions of Europeans whose lives have been improved by groundbreaking green and smart innovations, developed in local research ecosystems and centers of excellence, particularly in widening countries, which the ERA helped establish. On the 23rd of May 2025, the second ERA policy agenda has been adopted, setting a roadmap for advancing the ERA in the next 3 years. To provide a comprehensive overview of ERA policies, activities, and achievements, a new ERA policy platform has been launched, acting as a dedicated one-stop shop. Alongside the policy platform, the ERA Talent Platform offers researchers tailored information, job opportunities, career development guidance, and free tools. The new agenda continues this exciting journey for the next 3 years, building on a proud legacy, a stronger, more open and enriched research ecosystem, ready to welcome and retain brilliant researchers who choose Europe to leave their mark on science.
Welcome back, dear colleagues, to our second session on the first pillar of our WIDERA Info Day. I heard from colleagues that we have more than 300 people following us alone on YouTube, so it's good to see that we have a lot of interest in this. And of course, the recording will be put afterwards on the different channels. So if you want to go back to this or you missed it in the first place, then you're watching this in a few days from now. So the second part that we want to present is a core topic that addresses 4 areas in total. So it's a long name: building institutional capacities for ethical, equitable, open and inclusive European research area. I have with me Victoria, Georgos, Michalis and Hanna from the different units. You see where they are coming from. So they will present now their different areas, and then the long title will also become more clear. On the next slide, just some generic elements that are important for this topic. So the call opening and closure, as you mentioned before, all topics close on the 12th of March, and the formal opening will only be tomorrow. We have a total budget of 9 million for this topic, so we expect to fund up to 6 projects, which means for some of the 4 areas we will be able probably to fund more than 1 proposal. This is one of the topics using the lump sum approach, so again, reminder, look into the tutorials because you have to adjust your proposal preparation to that. What is important is, if you want to apply to this topic, you have to select one area and one area only, and within that you define your activities that you propose and that you demonstrate to contribute to the expected outcomes. For this topic, very important, and that links to the question that we saw before, we want to reach broad communities of stakeholders. You have to also demonstrate in your proposal what approaches you choose in order to make that happen and which is the target group and the geographical areas that you want to address. There is also a good way of building synergies with other topics of this call, so see also if you can somehow build bridges to potentially other successfully selected proposals. With that, I think we have covered the common part, and we go now into the first of the 4 areas on the next slide. And that is for Michalis.
Thank you. So the first area covers or focuses on what we call capacity booster for ethics and integrity. It is aiming at addressing digital transition and ensuring digital inclusion for all. So it is an area where it aims at making sure that safeguarding that digital transition and digital innovation is of an inclusive character and is there to benefit all parts of the society. So the outcomes, the expected outcomes of such an area, of such an action, is a reinforced institutional ethics and integrity framework that supports researchers and ethics and integrity bodies in addressing challenges related to AI and the digitalization of research, so as to ensure a high level of protection for children and seniors. The second expected outcome is the establishment of multidisciplinary networks, fostering responsible and ethical digital research. It is important to emphasize the word multidisciplinary, especially because we talk about ethics and the need for safeguarding and shaping an inclusive ethical governance framework. And the third element, the third expected outcome is increased awareness of the ethical challenges of digital research and the strategies needed to overcome them. It's an upcoming area of research where we think it is important from the very beginning to highlight what is there as an ethical challenge and how researchers should be navigated in order to overcome and address these challenges. The target groups that are, let's say, relevant to this area are researchers, research integrity and ethics committees, European networks in research ethics, research management and research integrity offices, ethics officers in research performing organizations, and policy makers. So I would say that the entire ecosystem of research ethics or technology ethics is in a way affected by this area, and I think by this action, and I think it is invited not only to apply but also to become part of the research design of this area. Next slide, please. So some key elements that relate to the scope of this area, it's the development of an institutional framework, which is based on standard operating procedures and operational guidance. Guidance in the field of ethics is so much needed, especially because we're talking about abstract concepts that need to be broken down and translated into actions for the researchers to be guided well. Training programs for researchers, ethics experts, and local ethics committees in order to safeguard responsible and trustworthy research in a digital context. Target communication and dissemination actions about the ethical challenges in the digital domain in order to build a common understanding about not only the challenges but also ways to overcome them among both the research community and the ethics committee or governance community. It is also important to build on the results of relevant past or ongoing projects. There are many projects in the area of applied or research ethics, and I think it is. We think it's important to reap the benefits of this, to harvest the findings of these projects, so as to make sure that what is going to be put forward is building upon the work that has already been done or is ongoing in several projects. And last but not least, we also think it is important to develop structured cooperation with the Embassy of Good Science and other European networks in order to enhance synergies and make sure that, especially when it comes to the embassy, that your results, your findings are uploaded into a platform where the whole ethics community is looking at, even on a daily basis.
Thanks a lot, Michalis. With this, we move from ethics and integrity to Hannah with gender equality plans. Please, Hannah.
Thank you very much, Jörg. Under Area 2, we aim at enhancing gender equality and inclusiveness in research and innovation through peer mentoring, in which the more advanced organizations support or guide less experienced organizations in implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of inclusive gender equality plans. Gender equality plans are a means or a tool which is very effective in promoting equality and inclusiveness, and it has been supported by the European Commission since seventh framework program. And since 2010, we have already supported 350 organizations in implementing them. Since 2012, it is a priority of the ERA policy of the European research area, and gender equality plans remain the core means of implementing the priorities there. In Horizon Europe, the gender equality plans became an eligibility criterion for selected entities, and the current ERA policy agenda stresses the importance of strengthened monitoring and evaluation of inclusive gender equality plans, so that we can achieve more advancement or better advancement in gender equality. So when it comes to the expected outcomes, we know that the inclusiveness is still in many cases something new or new concept for organizations that implement gender equality plan. That's why this calls invites projects or consortia to increase the capacity of organizations that are less advanced in designing, implementing, monitoring, and evaluating of inclusive gender equality plan. And we also expect that there will be an increased uptake and quality and effectiveness of these policies in organizations. Our target groups are research-performing organizations, higher education institutions, as well as public bodies. In the next slide, we see the key elements of the scopes. We expect that the project consortia will justify their collaboration based on the alignment in terms of common challenges, similar context, or specific thematic focus. In the past, we have had, for example, projects focusing on gender budgeting or topics as LGBTQ community, project that were comprising organizations from agriculture sector or medical sciences and so on. what activities we expect that will be addressed. We want to see implementation of specific action in less advanced organizations, including those addressing intersectionality and diversity, update or setup of thorough monitoring and evaluation of inclusive gender equality plans in less advanced organizations, and of course exchange of good practices and materials while building capacities and network with all relevant project initiatives and stakeholders, as already mentioned by Jörg. We of course expect that the consortium will take note and build on the vast majority of tools and materials that have been created by previous projects focusing on implementation of gender equality plans and inclusive gender equality plans. With that, this is all from me for now. Thank you very much for your attention, and over to you, Jörg.
Thanks a lot, Hanna. So this is all about taking the material that we have and bringing that to a really broad use. With this, we go over to Georgos to peer review in scientific publishing, please.
Peer review scientific publishing, no.
It's
equity and inclusion in capacities for open science.
The
other one comes after me. Anyway, so area 3 is about addressing equity and inclusion capacities for open science. Generally, the impact that we want to have out of this is support capacities for open science by prioritizing equity, which of course is always targeted to specific needs and not to general provision of access, etc. So in terms of expected outcomes, as you can see, and this of course contributes to the ERA action applying equity in open science, but in terms of expected outcomes, what we're looking for is to support researchers with diverse profiles and needs in adopting open science practices. At the same time, we want the consolidation of what exists in terms of evidence based on equity and inclusion in open science, and the recalibration or provision of training material for the practice of open science, which, as I said, addresses specific equity needs and profiles and not some more general provision of this kind of material. In terms of target groups, again, we are looking to work, or rather the consortia should include research performing and funding organizations, assessment agencies, research infrastructure, universities, researchers, innovators, and policymakers, so a whole encompassing gamut of profiles of organizations and stakeholders. And in the next slide, we can see the key elements in terms of the scope, which are to take stock of equity and inclusion barriers in relation to open science practices, but also access to open science infrastructures, notably in connection to scientists' personal circumstances, whether these have to do with the type of contract that they have, or the particular career stage that they have, or in terms of gender or socioeconomic background, racial background, etc. Develop and disseminate shared tools, training methods, and services tailored to equity needs. And within this, or in relation to this, to support the professionalization of open science related profiles, which is something that we know comes as a demand a lot for our communities of stakeholders. And this relates to, for example, data stewards, not-for-profit academic editors, and not-profit academic journals reviewers, and such kind of profiles. And lastly, we would like to see recommendations for developing a common ERA approach to equity in open science in its different practices.
Wonderful, thanks a lot. And then finally, to the topic on peer review in scientific publishing. Please, Victoria.
Indeed. So the fourth area is about improving the quality, efficiency, and equity in peer review in scientific publishing. So that's part of the ERA action on applying equity in open science. More specifically, we would like, of course, some of the expected outcomes, actually, to be more precise, are to achieve improved quality and increased transparency, recognition, equity, and non-bias in the peer review process, and the editorial system in different disciplines among publishers. And we explain here what we mean publishers. We include non-profit, scholarly societies, and commercial publishers, so a whole range of publishers, as well as editors and editorial boards. So both actually improving the peer review itself, as well as the editorial review system. Then we would like, as another expected outcome, increased awareness amongst researchers and other stakeholders, of course, the research institutions, scholarly societies, editors, publishers, etc., the connection between transparent and equitable peer review process is an integral part of high quality research. So these two things go together. Our target groups to be included here are publishers, editors, editorial boards, scholarly societies, research performing organizations, universities, research centers, that is, national research evaluation agencies, and that's not an exclusive list. And up on top, what I didn't mention earlier, of course, is that also AI considerations in peer review are also to be taken, to be considered in this call. And in the next slide, we can see what are the main elements in scope. So we would like proposers to consider, because we know that there is a lot of disciplinary variety in the way the peer review is carried out. We would like to have learnings and experiments and changes that cover at least 2 of the 6 Frascati fields of science and technology, and also consider in them the emerging challenges of AI in peer review. And involve all these actors that I mentioned earlier, such as editors, editorial boards, scholarly societies, research performing organizations, and evaluation agencies in this process. So we expect you to cover the following activities. It's not exclusive again, you can have more. So we need to pilot policies and processes in different scientific fields that will improve the peer review process. So we need change here, right? That's what we're seeking. Being mindful of challenges by AI. We want recommendations for transitioning scholarly publishing in different scientific fields to improved peer-reviewed processes in terms of efficiency, transparency, and equity, and non-bias, to address new types of peer review, such as open peer review, and new models, such as the Publish Review Curate, where review is conducted on available preprints, as well as understand attitudes and effectiveness of peer review practices in different scientific fields, taking into consideration geographic, gender, and career stage biases in the process. So we hope to learn a lot, and we hope to see change actually through this call on peer review.
Great, thanks a lot to the 4 of you. So 1 topic, 4 areas, 9 million, up to 6 proposals to be funded. So I see first questions coming in. I picked the first one on ethics. How broad is the topic of ethics? Would proposals be considered that deal with the broader topic, e.g. questioning whether it's ethical in the first place to advance digitalization in view of ecological and societal costs of it? That's a very specific question, but perhaps, Michalis, you can deal with that.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I don't think that the proposals should that are in this that belong to this area should question the need for a digital transition. There are other topics that would question this advancement. What we are seeking and what we're looking for is proposals and I would say ideas about how to make sure that the ongoing digital transition is inclusive, takes into account the challenges that children and seniors are facing when they are navigating into the online world, especially when they become research participants or subjects of research. So there we need to empower them, we need to make sure that they are well protected, and this type of ethical governance modeling is something that we are looking for in order to make sure that the so-called digital transition or digital transition, research on digital transition is taking into account these challenges.
Okay, good, thanks. Then, Hannah, there's a question about the gender equality plans and the less advanced organizations. Do they need to be in the consortium? Can they be outside the consortium and addressed otherwise? Is there anything we recommend?
Yes, definitely. We expect that the less advanced organizations are in part of the consortium because it's a peer review scheme. So, as I said, we actually expect that the more advanced organization will guide them, and they will be as in the previous calls that have been already published in 2022 and 2024, are part of the consortium. But of course, they can, reach out. It is always recommended to also, have some kind of like dissemination activities and reach out further beyond the scope of the whole consortium.
Okay, thanks a lot, Hannah. Victoria, on your area, you mentioned problems. Can you be a bit more specific on what are typical problems that we want to address in the field of peer review?
Yeah, there are a lot of problems with our favorite peer review, the cornerstone of certifying, let's say, the quality of research, assessing rather the quality of research. So efficiency is an issue. Quality, of course, the first is researchers are overburdened with requests for peer reviews. It's not. We know how hard it is to offer peer review, which also is not acknowledged formally, really, so much as a professional activity that is rewarded. It's not that it's not acknowledged, it's not rewarded. There are issues of transparency. I mean, we hear a lot about closed peer review, which a lot of disciplines practice, and whether, this is a good idea or it creates actually issues regarding transparency, the quality of peer review, the use of AI, the issue of biases, of gender, of geography, of career stage. And we know that different disciplines do different things. I mean, they're used to doing different kinds of review, whether closed or open or this or that. So we invite, to understand what they're doing and to see how they can progress toward more efficiency, more transparency, more experimentation with new ways, like open peer review, for example, which is good for some and others fear it or don't like it or so. So we would like to, see what is the direction for different disciplines towards more transparency, more equity, more efficiency in the end. And of course, as we mentioned, like there's the ever-emerging challenge of AI, ready-made reviews, like proposals, this is quite common. So how do we address this? So I think this call gives a good opportunity to different disciplines, to see how they will improve in all these ways and whatever other issues and challenges they may face to improve their peer review.
Okay, very helpful. Good. Then I saw there was another question for Hannah on the gender equality plans. It has disappeared now, but I think it was about the inclusion of other activities, how to choose. Perhaps you can help a bit with that.
Yeah, if I understood well this question, this relates to what you have said at the beginning, that it would be nice to maybe also consider merging or overlapping the areas that are within this pillar. So if this is correct, so I think it could be interesting as an idea to focus, for example, on gender equality in open access or in gender bias in a research assessment within the gender equality plans. However, this is nothing that is mandatory. It is my understanding that this is not something that we expect that the consortia or proposal will have to include as something, as a must, but it is just one of the proposals or ideas to where the thinking of the content of the project can be guided.
Yes, thanks a lot, and correct. I mean, just to underline again, you have to decide on one area that you apply to, and you have to identify that clearly. And if you then see meaningful links to other areas, or also importantly to other topics, because for example we have a number of topics dealing with gender equality and inclusiveness, then you can of course make these connections, but you have to focus your activities, your work plan on the core of the area that you choose. There is, Yorgos, a question on open science infrastructures. Can you explain a little bit what we mean with that and examples?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, we didn't want to be prescriptive, as we never do in this kind of topics or areas in this instance. But in any case, what we have in mind here is things like open fair repositories, open data platforms, open peer reviewing publishing platforms, or even open software platforms. So these kind of things that give access, and how people can actually be included in that, how they can participate in that, how they can themselves have access into this kind of endeavor that these platforms promise, or open ways to.
Okay, good. Thanks. And there is a follow-up question on the question that came from Fabio on the relation with other areas in terms of evaluation. So this would be evaluated under the impact criterion, because there, of course, we have the possibility to broaden the impact by linking different areas of intervention. I think with this, we are somehow dealing well with the Slido questions. So I would suggest we stop here for now. As a reminder, if you have more questions, you can always submit them via the Research Inquiry Service anytime, and we get back to you quickly. Many thanks to Victoria, because that was your last participation in the InfoDay today. The 3 others we will see later again. So stay with us, and we start here again at 11:15 sharp. Many thanks. Bye-bye.
Welcome to the European Research Area's
Good.
inspiring
And the
journey towards a single market for research and innovation. Let's explore how the European Research Area is bringing science closer to citizens, especially young Europeans, and enhancing societal participation across Europe and beyond. Here are some outstanding examples of initiatives on green and digital innovations. Plastic pollution is a global issue, harming rivers, oceans, flora, fauna, and aquatic life. Plastic Pirates Go Europe is a collaborative science project. Initiated by Germany, Portugal, and Slovenia, it engages school children in exploring plastic pollution in Europe's rivers. Once a pilot project, it has now expanded to 13 European countries, supporting the EU's mission, Restore Our Ocean and Waters. Equipped with the necessary gear and information, and guided by scientific methodology, these scientists in the making sort plastic, record its location on riverbanks, and monitor microplastic flow in rivers. Their data are then entered into the project database for analysis by researchers. As of now, over 16,000 students from 800 schools have sampled at more than 360 locations across Europe. The European Contest for Young Scientists highlights the EU's dedication to fostering young scientific talent. It takes place in a different city every year, and it brings together around 150 young scientists aged between 14 and 20 from all over Europe and the world.
My project is about designing new materials.
My project is about the theoretical and experimental investigation of ship wakes.
My project is about a planned vaccine system.
In 2024, in Katowice, in Poland, the grand prizes were awarded to 4 projects focusing on different areas of research, from developing greener batteries and solar panels to finding more sustainable ways to shipbuilding and farming.
ESS was wonderful. It was a great competition. I'm so glad the European Union hosted it.
I couldn't believe it, and I thought it was a dream.
A lot of adrenaline all at once, and I really can't wrap my head around it.
EU Talent On is a hackathon-style contest for early career researchers aged 21 to 35. Throughout the event, small teams of researchers work together to come up with innovative solutions to the most complex challenges of our times, based on the 5 EU missions.
We have to come up with a novel idea on the problems that are not yet solved by the biggest minds in the European Union.
At EU Talent On 2024 in Katowice, 4 bright talents were awarded the grand prize out of the 108 participants. The team, composed of young researchers from the Netherlands, Portugal, Spain, and Italy, won the contest for their cancer prevention project, Breath for Life.
Fantastic ideas. It's so inspiring to be here, and it has been such a great experience to share this with my team members. I'm really excited for the next steps.
Bringing science closer to citizens and engaging with bright young minds who are building a more promising future for all of us is and will continue to be one of the main objectives of the European Research Area. Welcome to the European Research.
Again, good morning and welcome back for those that joined us earlier, and welcome to the second part, the second pillar of our Info Day on the European Research Area part of the WIDERA Work Programme Horizon Europe. Now, the second pillar is about ecosystems for ERA. Here it is about building and reinforcing existing networks and partnerships, building new ones, building ecosystems that help us to bring to the end users the policies and principles of the European Research Area. We want to here build sustainable ecosystems, so there is a provision, I will get back to that later on, but you also have to envisage on how you plan to continue with activities beyond the time of the funding. That's very important to keep in mind. The policy areas that we are addressing here is about research ethics and integrity, environmental sustainable science, knowledge valorization, open science, we had other topics on open science before, and research careers. You see on the slides that we have in 2026 and 2027 calls. The first one in 26 is subject of our first session, and then we have in the second session the other two topics. Let me allow you to already go to the first topic that will be presented today by Michalis, Javier and Kaya. We get back to them in a minute. I will do the introduction on the common elements that link these three topics. So again, as a reminder, formal opening and publication of the work program will be happening tomorrow on the 12th of December. And the call is closing in March 26, projects starting around November 2026. The type of actions are our coordination and support actions, so no research activities involved. And for a budget of 6 million, we expect to fund 3 projects. So if everything goes well, 1 project per area. Important, you have to make your choice. You pick one area, not more than one, so be precise in your proposal which of the 3 areas you address. And as I said before, there is wording in the call text, and I read it here. Applicants must demonstrate in their proposal a viable plan for achieving self-sustainability after the end of the grant agreement, with a clear description of a minimum set of activities that will be maintained by the consortium with own or other resources. So be specific about the activities that you think must continue beyond the funding. It can be IT platforms, it can be toolboxes, up to you to decide, but be explicit because that will be evaluated by the evaluators under the impact criterion. With this, I think we can move to the first topic. Michalis, please go ahead.
Thank you, Jörg. The first topic is on equitable, sustainable and ethical research. So the idea there is to safeguard and promote research that is, first of all, ethical, is sustainable, but also takes into account the fact that the partnerships that are usually formulated or the power relations between researchers and research participants are not always on an equal basis. So we need to build an ecosystem, a reinforced research ethics and integrity ecosystem that supports sustainable and equitable research partnerships across lower and high income settings based on the values of the Trust Code. Trust Code is the outcome of a very successful project that was funded under the same program, this famous Trust project that produced a code that since then has become a reference document for Horizon Europe and for other research actions. It is there to remind everybody about the need to prevent helicopter research that is taking place in low-income settings and doesn't offer anything to the local communities and doesn't take into account their specific needs and particularities. So we expect that this, one of the outcomes is to enhance expertise in this area, in benefit sharing, in capacity building, and also in practical methods to prevent the so-called ethics dumping. Research activities that cannot be performed in the so-called developed countries because of the fact that there are ethical rules and legal sometimes rules that prevent this type of research, for this research to take place in settings where ethical standards are either do not exist or are a bit more relaxed. This type of practice needs to be prevented, especially when it comes to EU-funded actions, and we think that there is a need to promote benefit sharing and making sure that there is I would say equal rules framework for rules that apply to everybody in the whole research ecosystem. And also there is a need to create an international community of practice to promote the so-called ethics by design, so as to support researchers, research participants, local participants and national and local ethics committees in low-income settings to think about ethics at the very beginning, to think about ethics at what we call design level, at the conception level, and to take into account, to try to anticipate and even start thinking about how to prevent, mitigate, and manage ethical challenges and ethical or moral dilemmas that come up during the implementation of research. So it is important to emphasize the need for benefit sharing, the need for ethics by design, and also the need to avoid by all means the so-called ethics dumping. The target groups that we have in mind when it comes to this particular area is researchers, of course, local ethics committees, committees that are based in what we call lower and high income settings, European networks of researchers, research management and integrity offices, and also ethics officers in research performing institutions. And last but not least, policymakers, that the ones that also in one way or the other are part of the what we call a research ecosystem, and sometimes they are the ones that could frame a rule or a governance framework that may affect that may prevent this type of phenomena. Next slide, please. So basically, we thought of some key elements that relate to the scope of this area, which is the development of toolkits to facilitate partnerships that guarantee the premise of the do no harm, and also the so-called fair and just practices from conception to implementation. It is important not only to limit ourselves to the development of some guiding principles, but also to translate these principles into toolkits, so as for not only researchers, not only for research participants, but also local ethics committees that are not necessarily well equipped to have, I would say, a manual in their hands in order to prevent ethics tapping and promote and ask for benefit sharing. Another important element is the development of training programs, including a quality assurance system for researchers and for ethics experts, and also for committees in order to promote the coherence of the ethics review process. Training is important. For us, it's the cornerstone of our ethics activities. But sometimes, and most of the times, I would say nowadays, researchers and research ethics committees ask for certification, ask for a certain level of accreditation, and I think that any proposal in this area should think about how to build and promote such a quality assurance system. There is also a need to increase awareness. There is also a need to disseminate knowledge of the ethical values and norms for responsible research and innovation, especially at the local level. What we think it is a norm, in other parts of the world it works in a different way. And we have to take into account the plurality of ethical norms, but also we need to take into account the fact that we need to respect these ethical local norms in order not to be seen as a funder that tries to impose ethical standards, but also not to be seen as a funder that ignores local ethical standards. So proposals should build on the results of relevant past ongoing projects. There the word trust comes again. It is a successful project. You should give a look at what has been produced there, and also look at an ongoing project, the PREPARE project, which is seen as a follow-up to the trust project, and whose findings you can harvest and see what is there for you in order to build on. Last but not least, we are encouraging structured cooperation with the Embassy of Good Science, and also cooperation with universities and research networks in order to enrich ethics-related curricula in that area. We think it is important to address and to raise these issues at the very beginning of a university career, of an academic career, in order to, in a way, train and expose researchers to ethics questions and ethics challenges that may come forward or they may be confronted with especially when they undertake research in low-income settings. The challenges are many, and sometimes these researchers, especially the junior ones, feel unguided. So we think that this particular area will address the structural challenges, the structural, I would say, problems that we see them appearing in this type of unequal partnerships. And we hope that the outcome of this call would be an equitable, sustainable and ethical research partnership framework that will become a model also for the next framework program for research.
Thanks a lot, Michalis. Perhaps speak up on 2 points my colleague mentioned. The one is the previous or ongoing project. If you want to have access to outcomes, please, a reminder, go to the ERA policy platform with a dedicated section on Horizon Europe, where you find all the tools and deliverables that we deem useful in that context. The second point, there's a long list of target groups that is mentioned here, as in many other topics. And we had in a previous session a question on that. So just to underline, it doesn't mean the target groups have all to be covered by the consortium. You have to make a choice. Which are the actors that you have inside the consortium and which are the ones that you target with your activities. So keep that please in mind. Then we go to the second topic on open science practices. Xavier, please.
Thank you, Jorg. So this topic on global cooperation for the uptake of open science practices, it supports the ERA structural policy on enabling open science via the sharing and reuse of data, including through the European Open Science Cloud, or EOSC. So to give a bit of context first, well, open science has been a long-standing priority in Europe, and many initiatives and policies to support it have been put in place. The vision underpinning these policies and initiatives is clear. We want a research ecosystem in Europe where data, tools, and digital objects can be shared and reused securely and seamlessly. To reach this high-level goal, this vision of free knowledge, of free flow of knowledge, it is critical, or we have given importance to the implementation and uptake of the FAIR principles. FAIR stands for findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So we really need these principles to be adopted and put in practice in day-to-day research work to realize this vision. And another bit of context is that to realize the FAIR agenda for data and other digital objects, a key initiative is the development of the European Open Science Cloud, which is the EU data space for research and innovation, and that is currently in an advanced stage of development. So this is a bit the European context. So with this area too, we are inviting proposals that will cooperate with European initiatives to align views with the global scientific community and like-minded partners for making sure that open science become actually the new norm, and to avoid contradictions and orthogonalities in between what we are developing in Europe and the rest of the global community. So in particular, the kind of impacts or expected outcomes that we expect are as follows. First of all, strengthen international cooperation. We all know that science is global, but yet too often we find that infrastructures, policies, and standards remain fragmented. They are somehow orthogonal to each other. So we aim to align policies and strategies supporting the idea and the practice that research outputs can actually circulate reliably and as freely as possible across borders and disciplines. So we expect that this topic will contribute to establishing the foundations or to further develop frameworks for secure and trusted global data exchanges. This is about aligning policies and strategies. Going one level closer to implementation and relating it to EOSC, we would like to see new methodologies, standards and recommendations put in place that bring the FAIR principles to life and that actually support the development of the European Open Science Cloud. And going yet one level down, we would like to see improved interoperability of all these digital research objects, namely that could be data, publications, software, and others, and also services to analyze and to understand these digital objects across data and digital research infrastructures worldwide. It is important to remark that interoperability sounds like a very technical word, but actually it comes with different dimensions. There is the legal interoperability, so that legal systems are compatible, organizational in terms of policies and missions and engagement with your communities, and then also, of course, the technical, semantic, and syntactic elements. So this is why there are many different kind of research organizations that contribute to this program. It could be from research organizations themselves that have expertise in some data domain. It can be research infrastructure or service providers. And of course, it can be research and community-driven associations. And we, of course, hope and expect, and it is needed to develop these expected outcomes, that they have a relevant international dimension so that they can build actually effective bridges in between the European communities and what the rest of the world is doing. Next slide, please. Okay, so yeah, like I said, it is important that the activities in this area build on and develop further on the current European initiatives, importantly EOSC and related ones, to put the FAIR agenda in place, on which Europe, I have to say, we have a substantial degree of development here. So these targeted communities, they have to, like I said, establish efficient contact with European initiatives. So what are the key elements of scopes? First of all, any kind of initiatives that can actually facilitate cooperation and connections between European developments and those happening in the broader international context. So it's about building the bridges, the meeting places where actually these dialogues on how to push forward this open science can take place. But it's not only about building the bridges, it's also about to make sure that they are walked through. So it's very important also to work on the engagement with the international stakeholders and with the research communities and with the practitioners of open science to contribute to the development and adoption of globally recognized data practices and standards. And again, this is something that is repeated over and over in the topic, but it's important. It's crucial to put in place things that are interoperable, compatible, and that avoid contradictions and that could be eventually barriers to cooperation. The idea is precisely to get rid of all these kind of barriers. Then I was talking about bridges and they've been transited by the relevant experts. And of course, we want to make sure that part of this traffic of information actually lands and support the development of EOSC. Like I said, EOSC is an advanced stage of development, but still many elements, policies and technical specifications need to be defined. And we would like that the dialogue constructed through this topic actually supports this kind of decision and informs them to make sure that they are aligned with scientific best practices. Okay, these are concrete things, and very finally, we want to, one activity in the scope is the overall promotion, raising awareness and knowledge sharing, make sure contributing that to communities that are necessarily maybe not so advanced that they develop capacity and skills so that they can also contribute to this idea of the global open research commons that is actually global and that is actually open to as much as possible, not only to very advanced communities, but also to others. Thank you, and back to you, George.
Okay, super, Javier. Many thanks. Now, the next topic is one on green transition. It's a particular topic because it's one of those that you wouldn't find back in the list of areas in the ERA policy agenda, structural policies, and ERA actions for good reason, because there was a long list of candidates for this ERA policy agenda. Some have been discarded, some have been included, and for some we decided that other forms of implementation might serve the purpose better. And so this topic is the result of that discussion, where it was in the end decided not to include this area in the ERA policy agenda, but address it in the first step with a dedicated topic. And Kaya is going to explain that area to us.
Yes, thank you very much, Jörg. Indeed, so this action is designed to address the pressing issue of environmental impact of research activities. This issue has already triggered different types of initiatives in Europe to develop sustainable policies and practices. However, many of these initiatives remain quite isolated within specific institutions or also in specific regions, and so there is they lack Europe-wide impact, let's say. And therefore, this area is designed to address this fragmentation by supporting the creation of a network dedicated to driving the transformation of research practices and research organizations towards environmental sustainability. as already Jörg alluded. So this, just to frame it within the European Research Area policy, this action is aligned with the Pact for Research and Innovation and its priority to support the green transition. Now we come to the expected outcomes of this action. So the first one is to support effective knowledge sharing and support for both researchers and research organizations. So here the idea is really to help to create a more unified and cooperative approach to managing this transition. So we hope that this would really accelerate the uptake of sustainable practices and policies, and by extension, of course, it would also accelerate the reduction of environmental footprint of research activities. The second point refers to enhanced culture and awareness of environmental sustainability. Here you can also consider awareness raising not only on let's say then the environmental protection, but also the co-benefits of sustainable practices. So these can include things like cost efficiency, reducing operational risks, also health and safety, and even improving public trust and also promoting institutional reputation. The third point is to support increased integration of sustainability considerations within research funding programs and also other initiatives. So this is clearly about supporting institutions in that transition. We expect the network to engage a broad group of stakeholders. What we want to achieve here is to really catalyze change both top-down and bottom-up to promote buy-in and ownership across the research ecosystem. So you see these different target groups listed here. On the next slide, I will mention some of the key elements in scope of this area. So under the first point, so here just so you get an understanding of what's in the scope of sustainable measures. So you can really here consider all aspects affecting scientific practice. So these can be low-waste laboratories, rethinking travel policies, and so on and so forth. However, please pay special attention to energy-intensive digital technologies like AI. The second point is on mapping existing approaches and then to develop on that basis sustainability guidelines, and importantly considering various disciplines and research contexts. And the third point is related, so we expect you to build on existing approaches and methodologies and to collaborate with relevant projects, networks and initiatives. We mentioned some of these existing networks and projects also in the work program text, but feel free to also go beyond. The idea really here is to link up and support existing actors and actions. Under the fourth point, so here we expect you to offer evidence-based recommendations to integrate sustainability into research funding and evaluation. Here again, important to consider different institutional frameworks and engagement at all institutional levels. And finally, a point on promoting awareness. And here, of course, we expect you to also use different types of tools, for example, an online platform, in order to make information sharing more effective. And then just a final point. So we really want this area to help embed environmental sustainability in the daily practice, in the values, in the policies of different types of organizations and in the research practice itself, of course. I finish here and I hand back to Jörg. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. And I think all these areas, and I look now at Area 3, are beautiful examples on how big the target group is out there. I mean, all research performing organizations basically fit into the last area. So you will understand that we are looking here at projects that can demonstrate that indeed they can make a difference in reaching these audiences. So I'm now looking at the questions coming in. So there's a question from Fabio about Area 3. Is SSH, standing for Social Sciences and Humanities, predominant in this environmentally sustainable science, or one among the others? Kaya, how would we see that?
I would say that it's one among the others. So we are really looking at cross-disciplines. So SSH is, of course, an important part in this, but certainly this action should go beyond.
Yeah. And you made a reference before to energy-intensive activities, which also leans towards a broader view on this. Okay, good. There's a very specific question for Michalis on the ethics topic. Would an organ on a chip research project fit in an area 1? And I may already put in the disclaimer, we are not looking at research projects at all in this field, but Michalis will explore more on that.
Yeah, it's a good question. Indeed, it could be a topic that it is actually a topic which of major ethical importance, and I think it is a good candidate to address some of the issues that appear when it comes to ethical research that is taking place outside the European Union, and sometimes it's ethically challenging. So the idea of reducing animal usage or apply the 3R principles outside the EU is a good idea, and it needs to be, of course, enriched and promoted and strengthened by the consideration of the other elements of the area. But definitely this is an area where it's, I would say, a traditional topic of ethical inquiry.
Okay, very good. And perhaps just because there's a related question for this area, is the area limited to ethics regarding of research subjects, or can it be considered wider, for example, addressing the environmental impacts of research? So how far do we go in that dimension?
I think it can go further than limiting itself as a research idea to the so-called protection of human participants. I think the idea of addressing the environmental impacts of research, especially when it comes to AI research, for example, that is taking place outside the European Union, is important, and I think it could be used as a way to address research that cannot usually take place within the European Union and is outsourced to other parts of the world. So there, I think it's again a good example of how unequal partnerships could benefit from a framework that is going to be developed in that direction.
Okay, very good. And perhaps also on that point, in relation to the chip on organ question, just a reminder that there's also dedicated new ERA policy agenda action on new approaches and methodologies for biomedical research and testing for products and devices, which is again very much about reducing animal testing. So please have also a look at this part if you're interested in that subject. There's a question that goes back to a point I raised in my introduction. The plans for achieving self-sustainability, do they need to include a commitment of resources? Indeed, it would be important for applicants to highlight in their proposal what activities they want to continue and what kind of resources are necessary for that and what the source of the resources is. It is, of course, nothing that we would be have reporting on after the project, but it has to be demonstrated in a convincing way so that the evaluators can take this into account when scoring your proposals. There is now a question for Javier on Area 2. What mechanisms could strengthen cooperation between EOSC and the international research infrastructures? So I think it's an important question to see how consortia can link to EOSC and somehow make sure their activities link to the existing activities there.
Yes, well, how to link to EOSC? There is the EOSC partnership, that is the framework under which we in the Commission are supporting the development of EOSC, and we are in partnership with the EOSC Association that represent a very, very broad research and service provider communities in Europe, other kind of organizations too, supporting the development of EOSC. So that would be the natural framework or the place where you have to find contact to actually to contribute meaningfully to the expected outcomes of this topic. Now about the word mechanism is very broad and actually it asks about many different dimensions of this global cooperation on data exchanges, about ensuring, securing, trusted and interoperable data exchanges. Like I said, this touches on many different dimensions. One is about governance and policies. So how do we agree on what are the right policies and steering and governance mechanisms overseeing all these global cooperation frameworks? So that taps more on the legal, governance and policy aspects. And then that is what actually builds the trust, we believe. We think that the openness has to be not just live openness, but it has to be trusted and secure places. And for that, the clear and transparent governance is important. And then the other question relates to interoperability of the data exchange. This taps also on those dimensions, but also on the more technical ones. So the mechanism, there are international fora where the global community actually discusses this kind of topics through working groups. They are mainly bottom-up, so they identify particular aspects of these different dimensions and contribute to it. So that could be a good setting, actually, possibly to start this kind of discussions.
Okay, thanks a lot. Then, Kaya, if you allow, I'd pick the question from Beatrice. Would the network organizations between universities, banks and institutes working on social and sustainable finance be eligible? So this relates to Area 3. Of course, in terms of eligibility of organizations, they are eligible, but I would like to highlight that if you look at the call text and the expected outcomes, it is clearly described that any project has to address 3 different areas and 3 different outcomes, one of them being increased integration of environmental sustainability considerations in European and national research funding programs. So there is an element of finance, but whatever consortium applies also has to address the 2 other outcomes. So keep that in mind, please. Good. I think we have one question left for Michalis on the Embassy of Good Science and research networks. How can that contribute in the context of our ethics topic, please?
Yeah, the Embassy of Good Science is an EU initiative that has been around for some time, and it has shown the potential to act as a depository for project findings on applied ethics and on best practices in the field of research ethics. So I think there is a possibility, it's an open platform where researchers can go visit this embassy in order, this specific platform, in order to see what is there for them in terms of research practices, ethical governance practices, and to see what is also there for them in order to promote in the proposal that they are planning to submit. It is I would label it as a depository of very good ideas that could inspire projects in this area, could inspire research actions in this area in order to promote some of these practices worldwide.
Okay, super. Then perhaps we take the last question for you, Kaya. Grassroots activities. We've always find new words in our work program. So what do grassroots activities potentially contribute to this area?
Thank you very much. So, I mean, what we mean by grassroots initiatives in this context, I mean, these can refer to groups of lab technicians, students, researchers that come together. And of course, these are the people who are very close to research practice. So it's very important that there's a buy-in from that group of people, and they have a special status, of course, in these universities, because they are the ones who do the research, who build networks, who build research projects, and therefore they can demonstrate the feasibility of environmentally sustainable science, which then is of course important for any kind of evidence-based policies within institutions, but then also through these networks and through these research, collaborative research projects, they have an important role to play in spreading information and good practice. So therefore, it's very important that these groups of people are also engaged in this type of project.
Okay, very well. Thank you. Good. So I would suggest we stop for now. We start again in a good 10 minutes with the next part of this pillar. I don't say goodbye to Michalis because you come again. I say thank you to Javier and goodbye. And I say a special thank you for Kaya because she's one of the people behind the scenes. She's presenting not only the topic, but she was the one organizing the entire Info Day. So many thanks and see you later on for other activities. Good. And we see you back at 12 sharp.
Welcome to the European Research Area's inspiring journeys towards a single market for research and innovation. The European Research Area aims to provide appealing and long-term career opportunities for EU and international research talents, enhancing career standards and ensuring mobility for researchers and their ideas. The ongoing efforts of the European Commission, together with the Member States and stakeholders in research and innovation, help shape the future of research careers throughout Europe. To create enhanced career opportunities and attract and retain researchers in Europe, we provide EU and international research talent with a variety of services and instruments. The HR Excellence in Research Award recognizes the efforts of organizations that adhere to the principles outlined in the European Charter for Researchers. To this day, the award has been received by over 750 institutions from 39 countries. Euraxis serves as a network providing researchers with personalized information, job openings, career advice, and additional resources.
Euraxis is a pan-European initiative with the objective of supporting the research community, both researchers and research-performing organizations, especially in the process of relocation across countries to follow their career path. Euraxis has a truly concrete impact on the research community.
Euraxis now spans across 43 European and neighbouring countries and 9 representations across the globe. Its portal has reached over 100,000 registered researchers in 2024, offering about 1,000 job positions daily.
Euraxis aligns with the first priority of the European Research Area in its vision and mission of removing barriers for the mobility of researchers across Europe and deepening a truly functioning internal market for research and innovation.
Long-term professional growth, job security, and attractiveness of research careers are of great concern among researchers. The SECURE project is focused on promoting sustainable careers and empowering researchers across Europe.
The project has developed a secure research career framework. This is basically a comprehensive suite of actions for research performing organizations and research funding organizations to reform research careers at their institutions and basically support and improve the lives of their researchers.
The project has produced a set of simple implementation tools for pilot organizations that want to improve the careers of their research staff.
The SECURE project helped us to prepare a strategic plan to make research careers more attractive. One of the important points was to decrease precarity.
Research careers are at the heart of the European Research Area, establishing a vibrant research and innovation environment to attract and retain research talents in Europe and ensuring the stability and security of career conditions is crucial to achieve the European Research Area's objectives and contribute to a competitive and prosperous European Union. Welcome to the European Research Area's inspiring journeys towards a single market for research and innovation. Knowledge transfer.
So thank you again for joining us here. I'm Jörg and I'm here with Dario and Eugenia, colleagues dealing with knowledge valorization and research careers. We are going now to present the last two topics of the second pillar, that is building ecosystems for ERA. One of the topics is in 2026, that's the one Eugenia is going to present. The other one in 2027 for Dario for the talent ecosystems. So please, Eugenia, first topic is yours.
Okay, so hello everybody. So this topic for knowledge valorization, we looked at the key role of startups and spin-offs that bring research from that very often starts in academia to the market. And of course, just to remind you, knowledge valorization is exactly about bringing the research results and the innovations to the market, to society, to benefit citizens, to address societal challenges, and to inform policymaking. So the role of startups and spin-offs in that sense is very, very important for knowledge valorization, for the commercialization of research results, and supporting these academic startups and spin-offs, therefore, is very important for us in upscaling and making knowledge valorization stronger. So, of course, the startups and spin-offs need a lot of support services. And with this topic, we look only at one type of support services. It is a very focused topic, okay? So earlier this year, the Startup and Scale-Up Strategy came out, which looks exactly at how to support startups and spin-offs and how to make Europe the best place to start a business and to grow a business. So this topic supports the objectives of the strategy, but is very, very focused in looking at one particular dimension of support. And this is how to help startups and spin-offs through the role of intermediaries to test with citizens, with end users, how desirable, how acceptable, how wanted their excellent technologies are. So the idea is that very often the startups coming from research, they have a very good technology that can be validated, but perhaps their products are not what the consumers want. So with this topic, we try to, can you please go to the next slide and then we can come back to this one. So with this topic, we try to go beyond the technology validation to test the desirability of the products and services with a broader public. This could be citizens, this could be societal actors. And so the feedback from this testing can help to improve the products, to improve the value propositions through this broader exposure and connection with end users, industrial partners, and others. Going back now, please, to the previous slide. Okay, so what do we expect as outcomes of this topic? First of all, better guidance and services for supporting early stage companies, academic startups and spin-offs. Second, we want to have to test, but also to share these valorization best practices about how to do this. And how we are going to do this, maybe this could be a third outcome, but this is really the way to do it, is through pilots and testing of these innovative practices. The topic is a coordination and support action with an expected budget of 4 million and an indicative number of projects, 2 projects. And it is a lump sum. So let's go to the next slide, please. How this will be achieved, so the activities of the projects will be mainly through 20 pilot actions across Europe, at least 20 pilot actions across Europe. So these pilot actions basically will be how to test the new approaches and how to learn from the testing. At the same time, we want the projects to develop new guidance and to provide methodologies and best practices how to test the innovations of startups and spin-offs with end users and society. So the topics, the projects should involve in the consortia the intermediaries who support the startups and spin-offs, such as science parks, hubs, innovation hubs, practitioners in citizen engagement, and so on. There needs to be a sufficiently wide geographical coverage of these 20 pilot actions, as well as to support gender equality. Now, this topic also has this experimentation and testing approach, which is something we also did in the past with the experimentation and exchange of good practices for value creation calls, which we had for the previous 2 years. So we do expect the projects to build synergies with the running projects of this call, as well as to contribute to the knowledge valorization platform, which is a tool that also helps in the sharing of best practices through a repository of best practices, which is open to inspire knowledge valorization stakeholders across Europe. So I will stop here.
Okay.
And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks a lot, Eugenia. We continue directly with you, Dario, on talent ecosystems.
Yes, thank you very much. So this is the talent ecosystems for attractive early research careers topic. And we can move to the next slide, please. So this is a coordination and support action which contributes to the ERA structural policy on making research careers more attractive and sustainable and support mobility. It is a topic which follows a pilot call in the Work Programme 2024, for which we already have 10 projects which are currently ongoing. So we want to bring these talent ecosystems to the next step with this new call, which aims at the establishment of ecosystems where public and private sector organizations cooperate in the interest of the employment, of better employment and of better working conditions for researchers and other research and innovation staff, at the same time bringing organizational change. All of this thanks to the implementation of the principles of the European Charter for Researchers that was adopted in December 2023 together with the Council recommendation on a European framework for research careers. What do we expect this topic to deliver? We aim at having the creation of stable talent ecosystems, so stable environments. And when I say stable, I refer to the fact that it should be environments that go even beyond the duration of the project. So something that stays there even after the end of the project. So stable ecosystems where organizations from the public and private sector that train and employ researchers cooperate together in the interest of researchers, and the specific focus here is on early career researchers, so R1 and R2 according to the Council recommendation on research careers. We also expect this topic to deliver organizational changes based, as I said, on the implementation of the European Charter for Researchers, and also attractive careers for researchers and for other R&I staff. Target groups are therefore intersectoral consortia that could include universities, research and technology organizations and infrastructures, small and medium-sized enterprises and industry, government entities and civil society organizations. This is just some examples. I will also provide you with some information, practical information. So the call will open on the 8th of December 2026 and close on the 11th of March 2027. We have a total budget here of 29 million euros, which should fund indicatively 12 projects, and we use here the lump sum. And we can move to the next slide, please, where I will explain some key elements of this call. First of all, the focus is on large pool of researchers. So what we want is to make sure that there are a lot of researchers, and in particular early career researchers, benefiting from this topic. So focus on large pool of researchers, but at the same time we also mention here that we expect spillover effects over other research and innovation stuff. In terms of sectors where these talent ecosystems can operate, they can be either of a comprehensive nature or they can be targeting a specific sector. So this could be, for example, AI, health, automotive, defense, space, I mean any kind of sector, and this could also be selected on the basis of the analysis of sectors where there is a strong need of highly skilled talents, because one of the objectives that we have here is also to close the gap between research and innovation talents and the labor market. I also want to highlight that we expect these projects to cooperate with each other. This is something that we are pushing for the existing projects from the pilot call, and this is an aspect that I would like to highlight. It is really important that all projects cooperate together with each other in order to avoid duplications and in order to make sure that results are more effective. In terms of potential activities, what can be included? We mentioned in the call that the activities could be like developing action plans in order to bring the organizations in line with the Charter for Researchers. It could also be upskilling activities, and in this case, the European Competence Framework for Researchers, Research Comp, and the European Competence Framework for Research Management, for Research Managers, RM Comp, are extremely useful and important. It is important, of course, also to involve the non-academic sector, and this could be done in the context of the co-development of training programs. Also, career development and mentoring services can be, of course, extremely important, as well as outreach activities to attract international researchers to the ecosystem. Nowadays, we are talking about the Choose Europe for Science initiative, so of course, working in that direction, making sure that we create attractive environments for international researchers is very important. And I also said that it is important to make sure that there is a strong cooperation between the different projects. At the same time, it is important to build on what has already been delivered or will be delivered by the projects from the pilot call of 2024 and also on other relevant projects at European, at national and the national level. I will also highlight two things that are well explained in the call and which are extremely important. Participating organizations in the consortium are expected to have received the Human Resources Excellence in Research Award, which is the award given by the Commission to organizations that implement the European Charter for Researchers. So either they have already received this award or they have to commit to applying the new European Charter for Researchers researchers and commit to its implementation, which means starting the process towards the award within the grant duration. And we also say that this is as far as this is relevant for their operations related to the employment of researchers. With this, we mean that it is in the case when organizations are large enough, structured enough, employ a high number of researchers, and typically have a human resources department. Finally, salaries and mobility of individual researchers or teams of researchers are not supported, which means that we fund the creation of these talent ecosystems, these environments, all the activities that are part of that, but not the salaries and mobility of individual researchers or teams of researchers. And with this, I conclude. Happy to answer any questions.
Thanks a lot, Dario. So you might have seen that there was on the slide under pilot call a link. So there's a hyperlink behind that brings you back to the funding and tenders portal. And at the bottom of that page, you have the link to the 10 projects that we are funding. So that's a source of inspiration. They will all have dedicated own web pages where you get more information on their activities, so that can be used. We also plan to have a workshop in the second half of next year with the ongoing initiatives, and we will make that most probably as an event that can be followed online. So again, the possibility to follow the discussion. Perhaps, Dario, since this is a repeat call, are there any main differences between the last call and today's call? What have we adjusted?
So I will say that not a lot has changed. Certainly we are focusing on the need to build on what has already been delivered. As I was saying, we want to avoid duplications. A lot has already been done. A lot will be done by the 10 ongoing projects. We want to make sure that we go forward. Also, in terms of beneficiaries of the activities from this call, we have foreseen a reference to also other R&I staff. Whereas the pilot call was focusing only on researchers and specifically early career researchers. Why have we done so? Because we think that all the activities that will be performed, and in particular the implementation of the European Charter for Researchers, will bring organizational change, institutional change that will also, I will say already automatically, benefit other research and innovation staff employed by the given organizations, but we want to make sure that there is also specific attention paid to this in the new consortium.
Very good, thank you. So a lot of questions now I see coming in for your topic, Iphigenia. Perhaps we start with the question of definition. What definition do we use for startup and do the applicant startup, that's the question from Alexandra, need to be in pre-incubator or incubator phase, so before registering the business or after?
Okay, so this is not something that we are being very strict about. So it could be pre-incubator, it could be even when the idea is formed that the startup will be created. So we are not being very, very strict about what is an academic startup and what is a spin-off, because exactly there is ongoing work on the definition of startups, scale-ups, which is under the startup and scale-up strategy, and which will be very important, especially when it comes to legal issues. But for the purposes of this topic, the main how we apply it is really an early stage startup at the stage of even preparing to register the business, and a spin-off that might involve researchers of the university, staff of the university, and so on. So very, very open interpretation.
And perhaps just to stay with you for a moment, the question from Fabio about the at least 20 pilot actions, should it be from the same technological area? Can it be from different ones? Do we have any preferences?
It can be from the same technology area. At the same time, the purpose of this topic is also to learn to learn from testing the solutions of startups and to develop new methodologies and so on. It is important that even if it is from one technology area, the practices that will be developed take into account other disciplines. So, for example, the social sciences and humanities, for example, behavioral economics, because exactly the idea is to see how the technologies are applied in society, how they are wanted by consumers. So it is important, even if we have one scope of technology, to take into account in the pilots and in the practices the contributions of multiple, I would say, disciplines. At the same time, it is also very welcome to have different technology areas, to have a variety of practices within this set of 20.
Okay, so variety is important, be it either in the areas or in the methodologies, so that there is some kind of broader learning. Good. Dario, there's a question on the geographical scope of the talent ecosystems. Does it have to be regionally close? Can it be widespread? Does it have to involve a certain number of countries? So how do we see that? And perhaps also, since we have seen the first cohort, can you, from the first project, see some kind of good practice?
So, in terms of criteria, well, geographical proximity is not a criterion to be respected. Here, when we refer to ecosystems, we refer rather to the cooperation of organizations in the public and private sector, wherever they are positioned. So the focus is really on the cooperation towards achieving the results that I mentioned before. From this point of view, then it is the standard Horizon Europe criteria that apply. In terms of projects currently ongoing, I will say that there are some cases where the focus is on a limited number of countries, and some others which are much broader. I think that in general what is important is to make sure that the idea of benefiting a large number of researchers and other research and innovation staff, it is important that this remains at the core of the business of the consortium.
Good. Perhaps a follow-up question on the balance that is here interrogated between academic and non-academic organizations, and perhaps in addition, from my point, do they all have to be partners in the consortium, or can they be associated or otherwise integrated in the activities?
Yes, this is a very important point. So I will start from the aspect of the balance between academic and non-academic organizations. And here we need to keep in mind that the objective is, on the one hand, of course, to make sure that researchers can have better working conditions and better employability. On the other hand, because of this better employability, we want to make sure that there is this strong cooperation between public sector, private sector, so that talents are trained according to the needs of the private sector and therefore industry businesses. So it will be really important to make sure that there is a very good balance between public and private organizations, so that we can ensure, or that consortia can ensure, that there is this continuous flow between public and private sector, responding, as I was saying before, to the labor market demand. In terms of, you see, now I have forgotten your second question.
Inside or outside the consortium?
Yeah. This is also very important, because the consortia themselves will be relevant, but it will be extremely important, because of the objectives that we are pursuing, that they also reach out to other organizations outside the consortium. So indeed, we need to have balance within the consortium, make sure that consortia go even beyond their perimeter, and as I said at the beginning of my presentation, ensure that whatever is built will be lasting, so even beyond the duration of the project.
Okay, so there's a notion of the consortium addressing actors and increasing number of actors during the duration and make that a sustainable network. Very good. If there is one more question on you that I think is very important, is it more about business to consumers networks? Is it more about business to business networks? Is it something where we have any preferences, or how would you interpret that?
Yes, indeed, that's a very good question. To clarify that, obviously, with this topic, B2C is easier to test because it is easier to go to the customers, get the feedback and integrate it in the solutions. However, we are not only thinking that these interventions are relevant for business to clients, but also business to business solutions. For example, it might be that the startup is developing a technology that has certain characteristics which are remaining, let's say, when this is integrated in the value chain. So the characteristics that are being tested, they are important for the final solution. And in that case, testing it with consumers, testing it with society could give feedback that can be also transferred, let's say, to the industrial developer who is involved in the second stage of the solution. So although it might be, let's say, to a large extent easier to test with directly with consumers, so for innovations that are directly sold to clients, we think that this topic is also relevant for B2B solutions. At the end of the day, it is a choice of the consortium what kind of startup and innovative solutions they will choose. And they can also make a portfolio that includes both.
Good, very good. There's also a question on the 20 pilot projects, and perhaps there, as a general reference to our call text here, we in many cases specify that the applicants have to address in their proposal at least the activities outlined below and can propose additional activities. So in this case, you are expected to propose at least 20 of these pilot actions. If your proposal includes less, that will have an impact on the scoring very clearly. It's not an eligibility criterion, but it will have an impact on the scoring of the experts. Perhaps one last question for you. Why are the KTOs and TTOs, and you explain the acronyms please to us, not named as intermediaries here?
Yes, so knowledge transfer organizations and technology transfer organizations, they are just not named as intermediaries because they are the most well-known and classical intermediaries which support the transfer of knowledge from academia to the market. So we just wanted to give extra examples of who else can be an intermediary who are not so well recognized as intermediaries.
Okay, and sorry, we have to bother you with one more. There's the question of financial support to third parties, which I can already say is not allowed for this topic. So the question is, how are the consortium members meant to cover the costs for the pilot actions? How can that work?
Okay, so we have the prices first of all, which is a kind of financial support, but only in the form of the awards to the winning teams. So there is, however, the cost of the hackathons, the cost of the pilot actions will have to be covered from the lump sum.
Yeah.
So it's not a support to third.
Okay, Good, so you have to somehow resource that in your consortium.
Sorry, I made a mistake. I was just mixing with my other topic, and there is no financial support to our work, sorry.
So again, we repeat, no financial support to third parties here, and you have to organize the pilot actions and the organization that you address with that, with the resources that you get in the lump sum. And of course, there you have a certain degree of flexibility in also using resources in order to get people involved, engaged, take part in meetings, etc. I think the last one that we have to take, Dario, is for you on the research salaries that are not covered. How does it work with the personnel costs of researchers involved in eligible activities that are not research?
Yes, so in fact, we fund activities. We do not fund with this topic the cost, the salaries and of researchers and of teams of researchers. So I will say that if it's salary of researchers, it is not covered, even if it's eligible activities. It is rather the activities as a whole that have to be supported by this topic.
So we look at activities of the ecosystems and building the ecosystem, increasing the ecosystem, making sure there is the adaptation between researchers' needs and educational needs and company needs, but not any further. Good. I think we have to stop here. We are already beyond time, so a very rich section with questions. If you have more questions or you have the feeling your question wasn't properly answered, please use the Research Inquiry Service. They all come to us. We look at them properly, and it has the benefit of all applicants being able to see them. With this, we close the morning session. We come back at 2 o'clock sharp on the third pillar that deals with science and citizens. We see Iphigenia back on that topic. Dario, you are relieved for now. You may go back to your Research Careers Conference. And we see you all back at 2 o'clock. Thank you.
Bold visions move the world. This year, we celebrate 25 years of the European Research Area, Europe's bold vision to create a single market for research and innovation, a space where knowledge moves freely, where science drives progress. This is the fifth freedom in action. It began with an ambitious target, 3% gross domestic product for public and private investment in research. Since 2010, EU investment in research and development has grown from 1.97% to 2.27% of the GDP. The results of this ongoing investment speak for themselves. The number of researchers grew by over 50%. Open access publications now make up nearly 78%. The percentage of women in top academic positions rose from 19.7% to 27.3%. International PhD student numbers increased from 16% to 23%. 148 regions are engaged in regional innovation valleys, and 5 EU mission implementation platforms have been launched. In 2019, the European Research Area was revamped with new objectives and new governance to better respond to growing challenges, such as the green and digital transitions. This relaunch also introduced ERA's first policy agenda, delivering real impact across nearly all aspects of research and innovation. It focused on 4 priority areas: deepening a truly functioning internal market for knowledge, increasing society's participation in the ERA, amplifying access to research and innovation excellence, and advancing concerted research and innovation investments and reforms, under which we achieved successful results such as championing open science with a renewed European Open Science Cloud, securing and advancing research careers, and taking up the challenges of the green and digital transitions by bringing science closer to citizens. ERA has been a driving force behind Europe's progress in effective policy, creating tangible impact on its greatest asset, people. The researchers who found meaningful, secure, and dynamic careers in science. The academics working in inclusive, fair environments supported by gender equality plans, continuous monitoring, and diversity initiatives. And those who saw their research transform into innovative products and services, also with the help of the new guidelines on knowledge valorization that were adopted in 2023. The citizens who joined researchers, from school children acting as plastic pirates, measuring pollution, to young scientists in the making, competing in hackathons and shaping solutions for tomorrow. The millions of Europeans whose lives have been improved by groundbreaking green and smart innovations, developed in local research ecosystems and centers of excellence, particularly in widening countries, which the ERA helped establish. On the 23rd of May 2025, the second ERA policy agenda has been adopted, setting a roadmap for advancing the ERA in the next 3 years. To provide a comprehensive overview of ERA policies, activities, and achievements, a new ERA policy platform has been launched, acting as a dedicated one-stop shop. Alongside the policy platform, the ERA Talent Platform offers researchers tailored information, job opportunities, career development guidance, and free tools. The new agenda continues this exciting journey for the next 3 years, building on a proud legacy, a stronger, more open and enriched research ecosystem, ready to welcome and retain brilliant researchers who choose Europe to leave their mark on science.